One of the questions that we're quite frequently asked is whether CLiKAPAD voting slides can be designed to be brand compliant or brand friendly. So what I mean by that is, can you make these look like the other slides in your deck? So can they include your company's colours? Can they have a logo? The answer to all of those things is yes. The CLiKAPAD voting slides are made within PowerPoint. So most of how the slide looks comes down to your PowerPoint settings. The graphing does indeed come from the PP Vote software, which is the software that CLiKAPAD uses for creating its graphs, but those colours are user defined. So if you've got specific colours that you need to use for graphs, absolutely those can be applied. So where the question comes in is a lot of people, when they start learning the software, will start by working on a completely blank presentation or a presentation like this where they've just made a title and a housekeeping slide and it's all pretty plain, and then they add in a voting slide. And the effect of that, so if we go add-ins, CLiKAPAD, new slide wizard, voting slide, go, and we'll pick a slide from here. I think we'll just do vertical columns for simplicity, and the result of working in a blank deck is that we get a pretty blank slide. If we wanted to change the wording on this, all that we do is highlight the text here and type in a question here, and of course we can overtype this. This is all PowerPoint. Whenever you're seeing wording and pictures, it's all just PowerPoint, so change it as you normally would. But what about making this look a bit nicer, and what about changing the colours of the graphs? The graphs, you can either in the editor set them individually, so let's just pop in there and have a look at how that looks. So we can go into the graphing tab and pick a colour that we want to change it to something else, and you can see that's updated there. So I'm going to do some horrible clashing colours, but you get the idea. So we can go through, pick individual colours. We could also do that by specific RGB numbers if we needed to as well. So you can go in and do these things individually. The other thing that you can do is use a master that's been set up and has a colour scheme. So I'm just going to close out of that one, and then I'm going to open another presentation that has only a tiny bit of branding on it, but just to give us an idea. When we're working with voting, we should really only have one slide deck open at a time. So I'm just going to close that one down now that I've opened the new one. And we'll go in and we'll do the same and just add a slide to this one. So on this occasion, when I choose my column chart, I'm actually going to get one that uses the master that is set for this deck. So let's go to column chart and allow it to make the slide. Okay, so in the master, it's got this branding. The text on this one is set to be red, whereas on the previous one it was set to be black. So this is all just PowerPoint stuff, and we've also got a little where your logo might be on your slide popped in there. So let's go look at the slide master. I'm not going to get into full details of how to use masters. There's lots of Microsoft resources that can help you with that, and if you're not familiar with slide masters, I think it's well worth you checking that out. What I will mention is when you open the masters, it is always on the one that you're currently using. So on some of my slides there's a logo, some there's not. In my master, the voting slide is set to use this one that does have a logo. So if I didn't want that, or I just wanted to move it, I can do that on the master here, and it'll adjust on all of the slides in the deck. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that you can have more than one design. So this is my second design here, and I have another up here. So each time you see a big one, that's the beginning of a new set. So here we can set the colour scheme for our presentation. This is something the voting software can read. So actually I'm going to leave that one on that fairly subtle reds and greys. That fits in quite nicely with this. So let's close that down and we'll look at how we can draw that into here. You can overwrite what's on the master if you want to. So even though that was set to red, we can change it back to black. We can do all our normal PowerPoint stuff here. So whatever you need it to be. In case you haven't seen it before, there's a tool called eyedropper, which is really useful. So if I go into my font color and use eyedropper, I can go anywhere on the slide and choose an existing color. So if you've not used that before, definitely one to have a play with and be aware of. So let's get that red there. That isn't something that works for the graphs, but it is something that works within the PowerPoint slide. So before getting your graph settings done, do everything that you're going to want to do in terms of the rest of the content. So ignore the graph to start with and get everything else right on your slide, and then we'll go in and adjust our graph to fit. So here we go, add-ins, CLiKAPAD, and we're not doing new slide, we're doing the editor because we're just changing an existing one. And what we're going to do is go and have a look importing colors. So there's a button here, import from PowerPoint. There's another option here, this tick box. If you update the PowerPoint color scheme in your master, it will update all your graphs dynamically. The only issue with that is you don't have control over font sizes and things. It's just using some settings from within PowerPoint. So I don't tend to use that one, but I do like this one here, import from PowerPoint. So this is also reading the master, but you can make changes to it. So that's brought in the colors that we saw in our color scheme on the slide master. But what I can do is go on to individual ones and change them. So if I don't want that pale grey, for example, I can go in and I can pick another colour and it will apply. Whereas when we're using this one, use PowerPoint colour scheme, we now, when I click, I am clicking on these and nothing is happening. So I can't make any changes to them. So it's a bit less flexible. It's useful in a way, because if I now go into the slide master again and update the colours, it will update it across my whole slide deck. So worth you playing with both and finding which you like better. My preference normally is this one here. Import, save and go, and we're all set. Another thing that you may find that you have an issue with is when you open the votes, there's a little box that counts the votes coming in. So if we just pretend that we're now presenting live in front of our audience, so we're going to start with an introduction slide, then maybe an agenda, some housekeeping and so forth, and then we get into our voting slides. When we go to a vote, we get this little box come up. Now, if my logo were in the top right of the slide, this would be a real problem because it would be sitting over the logo. Even though that's not a logo area, it is still part of my example branding. So it's not a great place for that box to be. So that is another thing that you can adjust so that it suits the branding that you use for your slides. So I'm just going to escape out to close the vote, and then I'm going to press escape again. So I'm back to edit mode, and we'll go back to CLiKAPAD slide editor, and we'll just reposition that box so that it's not in the way of anything else. So I'm going to go to options, votes cast box, reposition. Take your mouse and drag it to somewhere that's going to be suitable. Try and pick a position that's going to work for every single slide in your deck. So I'm going to put it there because I would never have any other content there. Click the X. If I'd made lots of other slides, I would want this to apply across all of the slides. So I could just use this button here of apply to all. I work with lots of different branding for lots of different clients, so I haven't set a default position on my computer, but you could if you're working with the same design all the time. But click on apply to all and it will go across the entire slide deck. Not very relevant for me because I've only got one slide set up, but you get the idea. So in short, this can look however you want it to look. The only things that are set is you've only got certain types of graph, but fonts you can define and colours you can define, and the layout of your slide, absolutely. However you set it up in your master is how it's going to look on your voting slides. If you're using multiple masters, so perhaps your first section of the day you're using all purple branding, and then the next section it's all turquoise and so forth, it will pick up the slides before where you're adding the slide. So if I went to New Slide Wizard now, it would copy this slide because that's the one that I'm on, so it drops it in after it and it uses the same design. So if I was further down the deck and I had a different design, it would just apply that new master. Plenty there for you to have a play with. If any of that is unclear or you need any further help, you can always get in touch with us, and that's support@CLiKAPAD.com. That's support@CLiKAPAD.com.